Welcome to Consider Yourself Hugged. I am your host, Tammy West, coming to you from walking my dogs. So I have 3 things to apologize for before we jump in. The first is my lateness. It is Wednesday, and by the time this will actually post, it will probably be mid-morning or maybe lunchtime. So sorry about that. If you look forward to the 4 a.m. drop, that did not happen. I'll tell you why in a minute. The second thing is, of course, the quality, which I will try to edit and make it sound good. And the third thing is, if you're on YouTube, you go to YouTube to see video. Not that you really care to see my face every week, but you're only seeing, I don't know, I may post a graphic. By the time I post this, I might post a picture of me and the dogs for you to watch the whole time that you're listening. So there you have it. Sorry about those things. So let's catch up for a minute, and then we'll jump into the topic about judging, because I think this was something that a woman said on my trip this past week that just kind of made me go poof, like mind blown. And I hope that the wind is not too loud there. Follow up first to the stubbornness thing and the back. I've had a couple of people tell me they were thinking about me and praying for me, and I appreciate that so much. I really don't know what is wrong. I go back to physical therapy today and then back to the ortho people on Friday, but I've gotten like 3 different things. The first said that it was, I was moving furniture and I probably strained that muscle, and that muscle was laying on the sciatic nerve, and also that I had hip bursitis, which made me feel really old, although he said it doesn't have anything to do with age. And then when I went, so that was the doctor. Then when I went to the physical therapist, I told him that I also had some numbness inside of the calf of that left leg. And he said he thought it may be coming from the lumbar area because he pressed on my spine, and that it was that nerve coming out, which would be a disc issue. Because my pain, y'all, for 2 weeks, during the day I was fine. And I would get up, and every single night I would sleep for like 2 hours and then just wake up like, kind of felt like a massive Charlie horse all the way down my behind and my leg. It was awful. But like 4 nights ago, I started sleeping a little bit longer, and then it got better and better. And last night I didn't wake up at all in pain. And I have been a very good girl, patient-wise. I've done all my physical therapy exercises. I've taken the anti-inflammatories. I've tried to do, that's how bad the pain, sit on the heating pad. That's how bad the pain was. It was like wherever they told me to do, I was going to do it. So that is so much better. And I'm so glad because, and the reason for my lateness and the reason for this episode, I was in San Diego last week. You might remember that I left my sales job in December, and now I'm speaking, training, and consulting. And one of the companies that I'm consulting for is called Punch Art Graphics, and they do really cute signage, primarily for school cafeterias, but other things as well. So I went with them to the school nutrition industry conference in San Diego. By the way, if you've followed me for very long, you know my love for the school nutrition world, aka some people still say lunch ladies, but we know it's men as well. Such great people. But this conference was primarily for industry who sells to them, and also directors that wanted to come. There was 700 people there, which apparently was the biggest ever. It was just amazing. I had a really good time. Well, yesterday morning, we were having breakfast, the group that I was there with. Side note, and I did post about this on Facebook, we closed down breakfast every morning, which made me just crack up, because I never realized as much as I did this weekend, or this past weekend, how much of an introvert I am, and also how much of an early to bed, early to rise, because I could not keep up with some of these people. So I joked that none of us were in our youth where we might close the place down at night, so we would close breakfast down. So everybody else would leave the conference room from breakfast, and we would still be there. So I thought that was funny. But this conversation that sparked what I want to say to you today comes from a lunchtime conversation that we had yesterday morning. So I was recording. Um, Tacey is the leader of this group, and I'm going to be doing some Zoom trainings for them and some live interactive sessions. But I wanted to record her, so to do a little interview. So I hit record, and she's like puffing her hair. You know how we do. She's like, oh my gosh, do I have raccoon eyes? How does my hair look? Da da da. And Elaine, another woman who's with us, just started after we were recording. She was laughing and said, you know, we just do that, don't we? We see people and we judge them. She said, like, we think we don't judge them, but we kind of do. Like, what does that person's hair look like? Oh, what about those clothes or the way that they talk? Or so I thought it was really interesting that she began the conversation with flat out saying, we do judge people, which seems harsh. Um, and I was going to interject something, but I didn't. I just listened. So before I tell you what she said, let me tell you something I've talked about before, but maybe you haven't heard it, and or maybe you need a refresher. Hence the two kind of hidden reasons behind why we judge. The first one has to do with comparison. So it looks like judging, but what it really is comparison. So if I see another speaker, because that's my industry, right? Maybe your industry is, maybe you do hair, you do accounting, or whatever it is, and you're interacting with someone who does what you do, and maybe you think that what they do is so much better than you, or maybe you think what they do is no way not as good as what you do. And we're not even consciously aware of it most of the time. So comparison, what's happening is this, it's called or I call it, this slot machine approach. It's, I'll post it, the real name of it. It comes from a book that I read called Self-Esteem with Dr. Patrick McKay, and I can't remember the other guy, but I'll put it in the show notes. I've talked about it before. So if you go to Vegas or wherever, and you do a slot machine, you put your money in, you hit the button. I used to say you pull the handle, but I don't think that happens anymore. I think you hit buttons. And I'm making up figures. 90% of the time, I don't know. What happens? Nothing. You lose the money. But every once in a while, if you keep going, then you win. And even if it's just $5, the machine goes ching, 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 ching. And again, I think it used to be you heard like the money drop out. Now it's a ticket. But still, everybody sees it. The lights are flashing and it feels good. We know that those things like set off a release of feel good chemicals. And it's just like, wow. So what do we do most of the time? We keep going and we lose, 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 lose. But then on the 10th or 50th, I don't know, ding, 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 ding. That is what happens when, again, it appears as you're just judging, but what you're really doing is comparing. It's looking to feel better about yourself. And so we judge, let's say speaking, and maybe 5 speakers. I'm like, oh man, I should be doing better on that. Or I should be trying that approach. Or wow, what a great story he told. Or wow, what great stage presence she has. But then at some point, I find someone and I'm like, oh, I can do so much better than that. Ding, 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 ding. So it has a lot to do with self-esteem when what we're doing is judging, but what it really is comparison, and we're looking to feel better about ourselves. You've heard me talk about that before, more than likely, but it's so important to remember because you would think, well, if a child touches a hot stove, they are not going to touch that hot stove again, more than likely, because it felt bad. It was bad. But with this, you would think, well, why would I compare myself with someone else if it's going to make me feel bad? And that's one reason why. So that's the first hidden sort of thing to realize when you might be judging somebody. The second one, and they're very much related, but she said it in such an interesting way. She said, yeah, sometimes I'll look at a woman. So she was talking about dress because we had seen a woman earlier who was just dressed so amazingly. I mean, it was very much a style. She had a long dress and a hat and boots, and it was just amazing. We were talking about that. And she said, yeah, sometimes I'll look at another woman and I'm sort of judging that style. Oh, look at that. You know, is she pulling that off? Does that look okay? Can she wear that? Is she too old? She's young. But what we're really doing is sizing up if we could pull it off, like how it would look on us. So it's kind of a comparison. But what she's saying was, it's not in this way of judging slash comparing, it's not to like increase our self-esteem, or we're not looking for a way to win. We're just wondering how it would apply to us. And then she mentioned, okay, now let's go back to Tacey, the woman I was recording, who was saying, oh no, do I have raccoon eyes? Do I have this kind of hair? Elaine, who has this wise thing she's talking about, says, people, they probably do notice. Like if your hair's messy or if you have raccoon eyes, or they probably do. And they may even have a judgment. But as soon as they hear you talk, as soon as I get to know you, as soon as we interact, all of that goes away. And I thought, that is so interesting. So, because most people would have said to Tacey, or many people, no, you look great. People aren't going to notice that. But I loved Elaine saying, yeah, they might. But it doesn't matter because that's going to go away quickly. I just loved it. I love the fact that she was self-aware enough to admit, yes, we do get judged. And yes, we do judge. So what do you do with that? As everything that I talk about, the first step is awareness. Like once she said it, I was thinking about it. Like, do I do that as far as the judging and wondering if I could pull that off, or applying it to myself, or do I judge other people? And then that goes away once I get to know them. I don't have, right at this point, a ton of tips to relate to you, especially since this literally happened about 24 hours ago. But I thought it was so unique and so interesting that I wanted to share it with you, so that the first step for you could be becoming self-aware. So let me recap before we close this thing down. Judging, whether it's how somebody else does a job, how somebody else is dressing, how they're parenting, how they behave in their marriage. I mean, how they communicate, whatever it is. Judging oftentimes comes from two places that we don't really realize. One of them is, and I think it's called the variable scale ratio or variable ratio, the slot machine approach, that we're looking to build our self-esteem by searching to compare ourselves to someone who we are or do better than. That's the first one. The second one, which is kind of new to me, is that we judge in order to wonder how we might do at something, but then we forget about that judgment as we get to know people. I hope that gives you some, I guess today is just, let me give you some food for thought, because that's what it did for me. So thank you for joining. Thank you for showing me grace when sometimes things don't work out as well. Maybe I'll be looking at another podcast and be like, oh man, he never does a podcast while he's walking his dogs with wind in the background. He's always prepared. I should have 2 or 3 in the bank, but honestly, it's kind of not the way I operate. I should, and maybe I'll work harder on that. I don't know. Anyway, look at me right now doing my comparison with other people. So, I'll be working on that. As always, please rate, download, subscribe, send me some comments. Go to the show notes at tammywest.com. That link will be somewhere. I'll post those later today. And that's where you will find the self-esteem book and any other random thoughts that I might have. Maybe a picture of the table and the ladies I was with, something like that. If you have not joined the private Facebook group, A Place for Women. The link will be there. And also, if you're not a woman, follow me on my public Facebook page, Tammy West Seminars. I will put the link there. And I think that is all. I am almost through with my walk, so this worked out perfect. And so I will say, as always, until next time, consider yourself hugged.